We're going to talk about some green infrastructure planning work that we're doing here in southeastern Massachusetts, obviously including the Cape. This is part of a consortium, Cape Cod Commission. Heather's working, so Wacoit Bay Research Reserve is involved, southeastern Massachusetts Pine Barrens Alliance. So we've got a good group of folks working on the project, and this is through Forest Service LSR grant that we're funding. So goals for the green infrastructure portion of the project. Creation of a conservation vision map that can serve as a regional standard for this part of the world. Linkage of biodiversity support and climate change resiliency. You'll see that we kind of start with the biodiversity question and then really try to take it the next step and start to think about how that knits up with coastal resiliency. And then we're working towards implementation of that conservation vision at the local level. Where we started on this was to look at a number of different documents specific to the localities in this region. So we looked at comprehensive or master plans. We looked at hazard mitigation plans to the extent to which communities have been through the MVP process. We looked at those planning documents. So what comes to the top in terms of priority features for protection are natural resource areas for overall environmental quality, habitat, wildlife, and plant diversity, lands that protect water resources and drinking water supplies, protection of community character, and protection of recreational opportunities. Also, out of that same group of resources, and this is mostly from the hazard mitigation plans, but these hazards do show up in some of the other documents as well. This is a prioritized list. Flooding, no surprise for this part of the world. That includes both storm surge, sea level rise, and increases in freshwater flooding associated with heavy precipitation. Wind, coastal storms, snow and ice, extreme temperatures, and drought. All right, so what we're about with the workshops is really trying to get a good discussion going about how the combined stressors of climate change and continued urbanization are likely to impact the Pine Barrens ecosystem here in southeastern Massachusetts. And then also some discussion about how a regional green infrastructure approach can respond to those stressors and hopefully help to bolster coastal resilience. All right, so I think it's important to start with a definition of green infrastructure as we're using it here. Now, green infrastructure as a term of art in planning has really been over the years now kind of biased towards site-specific stormwater management features, but that's not really how green infrastructure started off. It really grew out of landscape ecology, and it's that bigger picture definition of green infrastructure that we're using. So I think it's just a beautiful definition. This is by McDonald and Benedict from their 2005 publication, which really kind of set the stage for this work. It's a network of waterways, wetlands, woodlands, wildlife habitats, and other natural areas that support native species, maintain natural ecological processes, sustain air and water resources, and contribute to health and quality of life. I think it's this segue between human well-being and natural well-being that's really a focal area for us in this work. Given that big picture definition, what type of features are we talking about? Well, certainly we're all about identifying high value resources on the landscape, but we're also thinking in terms of restoration work, and then we're also thinking about how site-specific stormwater management practices could also fit with this broader network. So in the category of sort of the best resources left on the landscape, that would include undeveloped coastal reaches with intact dune systems, areas with unimpeded sediment transport, and healthy tidal and non-tidal wetlands. Moving up from the immediate coastal zone, undeveloped riparian corridors with a mix of wetland and upland features, wetland complexes, and forested uplands. And then transitioning and starting to think about reconstructed features, and then this can be a way in a fairly urbanized landscape like we've got here on the Cape to start to knit things back together. Thinking about reconstructed features, constructed wetlands and dunes, beach nourishment, Heather had a slide on that, restoration of riparian corridors and reforestation, and then finally some thought about hybrid features. All right, so at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Jennifer, and she's going to walk you through the geospatial analysis we've done. So Jennifer.
For the purposes of our mapping, we define the study area. It's outlined in this dark black line. It's the 34 towns that are either within or have part of that EPA ecoregion within their boundaries, or places that have part of this North Atlantic coastal plain pitch pine barren habitat. And so that's what you're seeing here in this kind of dark red color. And that's defined by the Nature Conservancy's Northeast Terrestrial Habitats data layer. So we know there's a number of different data layers out there defining that, but I mean, it's clear when you look at this, the degree to which that forested landscape is dominated by this particular and really special habitat type. So for our purposes, this first pass, we prioritize three things: capturing places that are likely to be resilient to climate change, places that have high quality habitat for important biodiversity features, and places that are really important for surface water protection or flood protection. So for the first piece, the resilience piece, we relied on the Nature Conservancy's Resilient Connected Landscapes work. I'm guessing a lot of you are probably pretty familiar with that analysis, but the idea here, sort of the 30,000 foot level, was to identify places on the landscape that are likely to be resilient going forward. The second is to think about that habitat question that I mentioned. And here we relied on Biomap 2, which again, I'm probably preaching to the choir a little bit, but this is a really great resource we have in Massachusetts that helps map the really important ecological communities and threatened endangered species, where the really key habitat is in the state. And we just pulled out the two main categories of data that they mapped, which was the core habitat, which you can sort of see in the hatching, and then critical natural landscape, which is another category of landscapes that they map that are really about, these are the places that help support the populations of rare and endangered species that live in those core habitats. And the third was the surface water question. And so here what you're looking at is a map of various types of surface waters and wetlands. This is National Wetlands Inventory version 2 for the GIS people in the room. And then you're seeing in purple what's poking out are some of these 100-year and high-risk coastal flood areas. You know, the Cape is pretty special in a lot of ways. And so there's a lot of this land that falls into this green infrastructure network. About 75% of the study area actually is in this network. So the next question, we're thinking about a conservation vision map. So we also have to think about where can we prioritize action. And we know that not all of this land is sort of in play from a conservation perspective. Some of it's already developed, some of it's already been permanently protected. So the next step was to back that out and see what areas pop out. So the first thing we did was take out, this is just showing the undeveloped portion of that network. And it may have been hard to actually even notice the difference there. If you I'll go back, if you pick like one green spot on the map and just look at it, and then you can see the development. So it's actually not a lot. Only about 15% of that network is already developed. Most of it remains in an undeveloped state at this time. But then if we take out what's already been permanently protected, then we can really see where our places are we might want to focus our efforts. And in this case, we used a pretty restrictive definition of protected by just using the open space layer from MassGIS and just parcels with a protection level of in perpetuity, which is sort of the highest level. 39% of the study area is somewhere like 243,000 acres that we might focus on for helping to enhance or protect those natural features that have all those co-benefits that Eric was talking about earlier. And just as an example of a kind of data we're not capturing with this type of map, Southeast Massachusetts Pine Barrens Alliance has done a really cool project called Where Do You Love? They have a huge map and they bring it to different community events, and people actually put pins on the map, and it could be anything from my favorite hot dog stand by the ocean or the beach I love to walk my dog. It's capturing all of those more intangible social and community things that are special about a particular place. And they've got a ton of them, and the story map that Eric mentioned actually will have this embedded in it as well. So they'll be kind of a one-stop shop if you want to think about a regional conservation vision where we're taking kind of the best science and data we've got, but also capturing this community input as well.